is a pretty, gorgeous woman who doesn't even unaware that her husband is cheating on her and her son wants to kill her. We see her talking on the phone with a woman named Barbara. She's the wife of a local businessman named Brooks. They're also modeling with Anthony. The kid's is not to Brooks' liking, who thinks he's a burden on him, but his wife adores the baby, but because of the nature of her job, she can't give him enough time in the evening. They leave their son at home under the supervision of an experienced non-senior, and goes to an elite party. Barbara is piqued by the men's attention with her gorgeous dress, and flirtatious suitors hit on the marriage, not the pretty girls. It is notices Brooks' displeasure, and it's understandable. Sit down at the table. Barbara asks a girl named Simone if she ate a pound of human meat for $10 million. She, of course, refuses. Then Barbara asks her if her husband could sleep with Simone for the same amount of money. To which the man says no, nodding. Then Barbara asks him to go with the first guy he saw after the club. This question makes the man sad, but he agrees, saying that he'd go home after leaving the club. Stops the first car he sees and repeats Brooks' answer about the first. The woman gets in the car and drives off despite the man, and returns home to Rue can't find his wife. She comes home a couple hours later and acts like nothing's happened. Anthony's been a teenager for a few years now. Brooks spends most of his time away, leaving his son's upbringing to Barbara. Anthony spends a lot of time with his mom. He's fine with that. After a couple days later, Brooks returns home in the company of his French friends. Barbara introduces Anthony to the company and makes the boy read a book in French, but the kid couldn't do it because he simply doesn't know the language. When the woman turns around and walks away, the man notices the beauty and gives a whole compliments in French. Barbara understands what he's talking about and starts in his native language, and then get personal with the guests, are forced to leave the violent woman along with an angry Brooks. Barbara herself comes into Brooks' room in her beautiful lingerie and tries to seduce him. At first, Brooke resists, but then they make love to the next. Madrow, a married couple, comes into the room they don't notice a boy sleeping in the bed. While their son is taking a bath, Brooks' son's behavior and doesn't like it. A new countdown, while Barbara smiles approvingly. Another few years pass, a few more years, and you haven't grown up. Spend time with his friend Jack. They both stare at the scaffolding of girls sitting next to Brooks for joint attention. The girl's son warns that girls don't trust them. A lot of them just want money, and you don't notice a Spanish hottie named Blanca and decides to hit on her. The girl turns on music and they start dancing at that moment. And he's not paying attention to Jack, and he's actually in the shower with him, and he's attracted to him as much as he is to the guys. Two girls. Anthony is devoted to his parents dating Blanca, to which Barbara reacts very happily and praises him. Barbara invites Blanca to accompany them on their trip in the evening. The four of them go to a local bar where Brooks tells a story about his grandfather, which impresses Blanca. At night, the company stay at the Anthony Hotel. Blanca sleeps in the same room after intimacy. Anthony distances himself from the girl and expresses his dissatisfaction a couple days later. Barbara comes to the airport to fill in Brooks, along with the bar. They buy a ticket. Barbara suspected that Buxa was having an affair, but she couldn't imagine with her friend and her son devastated by betrayal. Barbara runs up to her unfaithful husband and says everything. He doesn't think Brooks is making a choice. And leaving with the forms, Barbara leaves the airport in tears and is noticed by a local cab driver who decides to comfort her after the trip. Barbara comes to the house and catches her son with Jack, which Angé, the woman, doesn't approve of her son's same-sex attraction. The woman's son tells the son that the father ran off with the bar to fulfill his carnal needs. Barbara hire a man named Sam, and he won't admit to his mother that he hates his father for cheating on him, but he still wants him, so he decides to write him a letter. Barbara has already crossed out the betrayers of her life in a frank conversation with Andy. We learn that he also likes men, and after this confession, Sam gets close not only to Barbara but also to her son the cops recognize and her son's boyfriend with her lover. He says he'll pay a price to get him to stop doing it. But the man thinks Anthony's an adult and can make up his own mind. He can decide what he wants to do with who. Meanwhile, Anthony is getting close to his friend Jack, and in the end and doesn't feel the psychological discomfort. He feels a lack of paternal attention and decides to go to his father's house and get to the door. He hides the letter under the mat. Brooks notices it, but doesn't react, he notices the forms and decides to take the letter. Anthony reads the letter, and the blanks learns that the ribbons are out of place, need a father more than ever. Never before in the process of making a painting. Barbara gives in to her emotions and starts crying. Sam sees this and decides to comfort her, and they bond. The end has come home and don't notices her mother asleep. Sam takes off his clothes and decides to join them in the morning. As soon as Barbara replaces Sam on her bed and is attacked by hysterical laughter. After a heated encounter with them, forced to leave the Swedish family after saying goodbye. The men leave alone. Barbara starts to go crazy and tries to kill herself, but when she sees it, her son managed to get her to an ambulance and saved her life. Brooks' friend Simone comes over to see Anthony and asks her if she's ever met a boxer, to which Simone tries to explain to Anthony that he should forget about his father because he does what he wants and loves himself. He doesn't care about the people around him. A couple days later, Barbara makes a full recuperates completely. She goes to her son's wushu class. In the evening, when Barbara is taking a bath, she calls Anthony over to her place. They eat ice cream. The woman admits that she's going on a date with a man and the guy doesn't like it. A couple days later, she attends a funeral where replaces her father with Blanca. The man completely ignoring his extended family, and that's where Anthony's heartache time passes and Barbara sends they move to London, and neither has he's changed. He's become more cynical and arrogant. He has a new lover whose mother doesn't like him sitting on the sofa. She tries to mix him up, and after close intimacy and not finally disillusioned with the woman, gradually the guy's mental health starts deteriorate between the bar brand. They have a serious argument in the course of during which they stabbed each other in the abdomen, after which the woman dies on the spot. Scared couple calls an ambulance. She goes to make noodles to eat in front of her mother's body. Her mother's body as if nothing had happened. Police arrive. The officer realizes that Anthony's killer is being arrested. Brooks writes a letter to Intel, and is sentenced to 8 years for his crime after his release. He lived with Barbara's mother, Nina, whom he also tried to kill but unsuccessful and ended up killing himself in prison.